Welcome to It's a Veteran's Life, where we share the powerful stories of those who've served our country and the families who support them. I'm your host, Mike Turbyfill, a veteran dedicated to advocating for the men and women who've worn the uniform. Join us as we dive into the challenges, triumphs, and the unwavering spirit that defines military life. Whether you're a veteran, a family member, or just someone who wants to understand the journey, this podcast is for you. Let's ensure that no veteran or their family ever feels alone. All right, well, this week on It's a Veteran's Life, we're honored to welcome Marine Corps veteran Major Jake Freedman. Today we're discussing moral injury. Unlike physical wounds, moral injury involves the psychological and emotional scars left by actions or inactions that go against one's core values, often experienced in the high-stakes environment of military service. Major Freedman brings a wealth of experience and personal insight into how moral injury can affect veterans long after their service ends. Together, we'll explore how to recognize these wounds, understand their impact, and most importantly, how to begin the journey of healing. So, how
Thanks,
you doing,
man.
Jake?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Just been a busy day conducting business, and just excited to talk to you today.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be a blast. It's gonna be a blast. So, you wanna give the guys a short little introduction of yourself?
Yeah,
What
Reader's
you kind of up
Digest
to?
version. So,
Yeah.
and I'll try to give as much context as possible. I grew up like super duper duper Mormon-y, like Mormon Church, LDS, and one of the hallmarks of the religion is how honorable military service is, right? And so, however, there's kind of a lot of Disney interpretation of how the world works, good versus evil. So I was just had graduated high school in May, and 9/11 happens, in September, obviously. And me and everybody else I knew was like, well, to hell with this. Let's go over there and beat up some Arabs, some Muslims. And I knew quite a bit of Vietnam vets. They're like, hey, yeah, go, but you're a smart dude. Try to commission first, go over as an officer, right? So, I went and served my mission for the church in Sweden, got back in 2004, got into college, got married, graduated with a bachelor's in behavioral psychology. Got into grad school for something called industrial organizational psychology, which is basically a lot of organizational psych with a heavy dose of statistics. Well, I get in there and realize that a lot of the cohorts, that were ahead of us, they would go out and get these just really sweet jobs, like $250,000 a year, $150,000 a year right out of grad school. And they would come back and be like, look, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Like, I go into these organizations, they're hiring me to be a consultant, and I have no idea if I'm telling them the truth or not. I just go off the textbooks, and I'm like, man, that really doesn't sit right with me. Like, you would think that at this level, you would kind of know what you're talking about. Further, I found that all of us would end up getting overly enthusiastic about whatever guest lecturer or speaker was coming around about, organizational development and this and that. And this week would be like, this guy's right. This guy's telling us the truth. And the next week, this guy, he's telling us the truth. And a lot of them were just mutually exclusive from each other. They couldn't be the same things at the same time. And after a while, I was like, man, we're the ones that don't know what we're talking about. I'm like, well, shit, how can I disabuse myself of everything I think I know about how the world works? Oh, yeah. America's still in two different theaters of combat. It was about 2008 at this point. And this is probably not going to happen again in my employable lifetime. So I thought, I'm going to go commission as an officer in the Corps. Get some shit figured out. Do what I've always wanted to do. I'm getting old by this point. I think I was like 28. So I went and talked to the dean of students, a guy named Marshall Goldsmith, and he was like, yeah, run, don't walk. Do it. It'll set you so far advanced of other people that are just in the IO psychology field. So I went. I got into boot camp or officer candidate school, as it were, January of 2009. And I was in Afghanistan by, God, January, February, I think, of 2010. 2011, I'm sorry. It went quick, man. It was like bam, bam, bam. So deployed over there with 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, America's battalion, by the way. Uh, came back from that. That was a very arduous deployment where I learned a lot about what is and what isn't, by God. Uh, Ran into some real goofy snags with, there was some phenomenal leadership in the Corps, and there was some just really terrible career focused, career driven officers and senior enlisted that was like, man, I can't trust these dudes with my professional and personal life. Like, they're making bad decisions here, and they won't listen, right? So ended up getting out of the Corps, got hired on by a silly company for about 11 months. Then was able to get hired on by Amazon.com. Then through them, I was able to transfer back over to Sweden to help launch Amazon Web Services Nordics. And in the meantime, I realigned myself back into the reserves, Marine Corps Reserves. They'll tell you you miss the you don't miss the circus, but you do miss the monkeys and clowns. And this is true. Typically, we don't
Amen.
miss the organizations, but the people. So ended up becoming part of a Third Civil Affairs Group, and then ultimately Marine Corps Forces Europe with a focus on Russian capabilities and the skiff for future planning. And then when the Rona, the China virus, as you can see, I'm a COVID veteran, very distinguished. Um, Ended up moving back to Montana, taking my Bezos bucks and the money we had saved over the years, bought 30 acres here. Um, and during this time, I was able to, I cranked out a master's degree in organizational development and human resource management, and then a second master's, which I just now finished like 2 weeks ago, in marriage and family therapy, because I had some wild experiences as a veteran. And it took a long time for what I had experienced in Afghanistan. It took a long time for it to catch up, but when it did, it was like, okay, this is bad. Went into some psychologists and therapists, and their answers were not only bad but like fundamentally wrong. So, kind of having the background or the base of IO psychology, I decided I was going to create a hybrid sort of expertise in dynamic group psychology, which is essentially what a marriage and family therapy is, as well as a veteran focus. And I already have the business background, obviously. Um, One of the things I noticed is that so many times we try to treat veterans as just veterans, but the veteran ain't going to make it. It's kind of that three-legged stool thing we talked about when we spoke earlier this week.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be able to keep the veterans, family, and friends intact somehow while they're going through what they're going through, because without their family, typically they ain't going to make it. They're not going to make it, right?
No.
Typically. Sometimes they do. So the idea is, let's not blow up their family, and let's not hyper focus just on the vet, but let's make sure they have a system around them, right? Anyway, married, 5 kids, 4 kids, thinking about another. Homesteading out here. I run a construction company. I started to pretty much fund my grad school because debt is of the devil. Live cheap, buy cheap with this $500 sweet baby 1991 RV that I'm remodeling. As you can tell, I'm ripping everything out and redoing it so it can be my mobile office / therapy center. But anyway, that's the story, man. Is that enough? Need more? Need less?
Oh no, that's perfect, man. Busy guy, busy guy.
You're perfect.
Uh, I wish I would have had that drive when I was younger. I really do. It would have saved me so
How
much
old
money.
are you, man? I'm 42. Younger.
I'm 34, man.
Shit, you're still young.
Oh yeah, I got major plans. I got major plans.
Good.
All right, so let's jump into this moral injury business. Can you
Yeah.
explain what moral injury means to you and how you've encountered it in your work and life?
So moral injury is a to me really fascinating concept. It's like, look, the problem veterans have with the whole idea of wartime trauma is we all know guys who went through it, like truly went through it, and they seem like they're rather unscathed. We all have the experience where we'll go through something really gnarly, and it feels like it doesn't really matter very much. It's like okay, well, that's happened, that's cool, or no, that sucked horribly, but I'm good. But then there's other small things where you're like, it you're like, why does that bother me so much? Why is that sticking to me so hard? And it really doesn't feel like it makes sense. So moral injury is something a psychiatrist that worked with a lot of Vietnam veterans. He wrote this great book called Achilles in Vietnam, and it kind of takes the Greek story of Achilles and overlays it, kind of almost line by line, but at very least section by section, with a lot of the experiences these Vietnam veterans were explaining to him about just losing your humanity or going berserk, and why just certain things. Why was it the kid that was starving one day on the village trail, obviously a casualty of war in a roundabout way? Why does that kid make you wake up at night, and it's not the dude that got blown up and his guts all over you, right? So moral injury, we all have a fairly predictable no, I'm sorry. We all have a heuristic or a framework with which we live the world. We all understand, like, the way we drive down the highway. That we've got that center line. Likely nobody is going to veer into the lane and smash us. They can. We know it's a possibility. Now, if we saw a car flying down the road, like literally flying, it would cause us to be like, well, what, and that would stick with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in a similar way, moral injury occurs when something happens that is outside of the moral framework that we live our lives through, and there's really about five different indexes, and this is according to another guy, Dr. Jonathan Haidt. Five indexes. Sorry, six key foundations or indexes for how everybody lives their life morally. You've got a care harm index. Some people care a lot more. I'm sorry, they are more focused on rendering care versus simply not doing harm, right? The two sides of that coin. Another one would be fairness versus cheating. Is it more important to be fair or simply not cheat? Loyalty, betrayal. Um, the some people, and what Dr. Jonathan Haidt found is that people on the more right wing libertarian political spectrum pull from all six of those moral reasoning indexes. People that tend to be quite left or liberal typically only pull from fairness and equality. So um, when your moral reasoning gets disrupted, I got to find you again. When your moral reasoning gets disrupted, it tends to stick with you. It tends to widen out your perspective of what's possible and impossible, but your brain kind of snags. Now, you recall last week we talked about how all of us every day we process information, whether we feel it, smell it, hear it, see it, touch it. It all gets processed pretty much first, and this is going to be a vast oversimplification. It all gets put through our amygdala first. Our amygdala's job is to tell us fight it, fuck it, hide from it, or run from it, right? Once it does that, it charges the experience with whatever it needs to, or eat it usually. And it sends it to somewhere called the hippocampus. Now, the hippocampus says, okay, all right, this actually compares to a lot of the things we've dealt with before. Let's file this away in the fascinating facts section of our brain. Now, when something occurs that's outside of our parameter of what we prior to that believed should or could happen morally. And when I say moral, I don't mean like Jesus moral. I mean the way we make value judgments on the world around us. And that's also a simplification. But what happens with trauma, and this is why sometimes the big things are easier to swallow than the small things, seemingly, is that the amygdala gets in. It's like, oh fuck this, sends it to the hippocampus. The hippocampus says, dude, I have no idea what you just sent me. What the hell is this? Are you sure? Sends it back to the amygdala. Amygdala says, oh my god, there it is again, and sends it back to the hippocampus. And so they get into that loop where that's literally a traumatic loop, right? So what happens is you can just be living your life, trying to build your own personal, Casa Mojo Dojo. And like for me, it was certain smells due to Afghan dudes getting blown up that I was in proximity to, with dealing with their body parts and things. There was just a certain kind of musky, cuminy, turmeric type of smell, right? That would it would make my brain like go, and all of a sudden I was on high alert for no reason, right? It's like literally driving by an Indian restaurant and all of a sudden you're just on high alert. You're like, what the fuck? What happened? Something's wrong. Something's about to go bad. And it's like, no, that olfactory sense hit your amygdala, and your amygdala is like, oh God, this again. Sends it over to the hippocampus, and your hippocampus is like, yep, we're screwed now. And it starts that loop really, really hard. And that's where a lot of disassociation and things come from with veterans, where an event can occur that seems like it doesn't really, it doesn't have much to do with combat or the war or the military or anything else, but all of a sudden, 10, 15, 20 minutes can go by, or 5 minutes, and all of a sudden you're coming to, and everyone around you is like, what the hell happened there? You were out of control. And you're like, I am so sorry, I didn't realize, because holding on to that energy is really, really expensive for the brain. It takes a lot of energy, right? So that is a very sloppy, long-winded explanation of moral injury. But does it make sense to you, or do you have more questions on it?
No, I think it makes sense to me. One way I can kind of connect with that is back to I don't want to say his name wrong, the author of Achilles in Vietnam. How he's talking
Yeah,
about
Dr. Shea.
the kid that was starving. That's kind of one of the things, even with us in Iraq and Afghanistan. Uh, it wasn't necessarily the fighters. It was the kids, because we perceive
That.
kids as innocents,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's
dude,
kind
I
of
had
how.
one. Yeah. No, go hit it.
Oh no, just say that's kind of how I kind of put the moral injury in my head. How it connects is the innocence of children. You know, that's just one aspect of it, but that's the best way I can think of how
Yeah.
to help somebody explain it.
Well, and dude, yeah, for me, some of the things that came up, at least in the core, and obviously working in whatever companies we work in, you have strange events that you have to deal with. For me, it was the second and third order effects of, like, we would identify a bad guy, and in hindsight, you look back and you're like, who the hell was a bad guy there? Because, like, if we had a massive superpower invade our country, it wouldn't matter who they were or why they were there. That good old fashioned Scotch Irish blood is like, we're going to be in the hills doing some creepy, crawly, secret squirrel bad boy stuff, right? That's just how our culture is.
Wolverines.
Well, right, and that's you look at the Afghans. There's really no difference, and so we worked with a lot of guys who were solid, anti-Soviet mujahideen back in the 80s. And when the Soviets pulled out and Americans kind of pulled out and Afghanistan went to hell, by the time we showed up, these guys are 50, 60, 70 years old, and they had lived their whole lives. And they're like, they would tell us, yeah, Taliban are a bunch of upstarts. They're just a bunch of street gangsters. Like, they're not like we were when we were young, man. When we were young, we could beat these guys' ass. Um, but we would kind of, force them and make them to use their political capital or social capital to help us out in the global war on terror, and pacifying Afghanistan. And some of these dudes would end up playing both sides because they're too old to fight the Taliban, and they're certainly too old to try to fight us. And they're just like, look, I got my compound, I got my 4 wives, I got my grandkids, my kids. I just want to be left alone, right? And we were like, nope, you're either with us or against us. And the loss of life that came out of some of the, just unfortunate for them, alliances that were made. And I'm talking when the old man would get killed, the old former mujahideen that either stepped on the wrong side of the Taliban or the wrong side of us. Either one of us was going to kill him. It didn't matter who. We were like, yeah, as long as they're dead, rah. Um, well, then the vultures and the predators come in and kill all their sons, steal all their daughters and rape them, take their kids, sell them into sex slavery. That got tough. That got tough. I was going through some of my pictures I pulled up on my Google, shared drive cloud thing last night, and my little daughter was next to me, and a little Afghan kid that we knew that was like 6 or 7, came up, and my daughter says, "Who's that boy?" He's like, "Oh, he's an Afghan boy." It's like, did he have a good life? And I'm like, no, I can pretty much guarantee he didn't, because we helped kill his dad, who was like 80 years old, but the dad was a very corrupt local warlord, whatever dude, playing both sides. So of course we were like, you gotta go, not with us, you're against us. And so
Right.
ended up that kid literally got kidnapped by his father's enemies, and his father was dead, and sold into sex slavery into Pakistan. And they came in and they bragged to us about it, and we're like, whoa, that's not cash money. That's not what we're here to do. Like, yeah, no, fuck that guy. He was
Well, see,
bad.
stuff like
Uh,
that, stuff like that
what's
causes
that?
generational warfare.
Oh, yeah, it
You know,
really does.
stuff like,
And so it with the moral reasoning or the moral injury thing, like old men with families. One of my things is a pretty right wing conservative type of dude. There's a certain sanctity about being an old man surrounded by your family, enjoying the fruits of a lifetime of labor, right? And to watch that get ripped away from this old dude, and then his uh, kids, grandkids, daughters, daughter-in-laws, and sons all just get massacred. We're talking about 4, 5, 6 generations of family just getting murdered, not by us necessarily, but by the things we set into play. It's like, that's that's dark. That's dark,
mm-hmm.
and in a certain way, you've got to atone for it. And what do you know when you're young? I mean, Marine Corps, I'm sorry, the military,
Oh,
DOD is really, really good at selling you on the war, not real good at undoing what it does to you, as it turns out. Who
amen to
knew?
that. Took
Well,
took me what 10, 12 years to finally start getting help, thanks to my wife. You know.
yeah, well, like I said, man, the sanctity of family, and why families are so important to the
Mhm.
veteran's journey. So, like, I've given a little bit of examples.
Mhm.
I gave you some examples of the military pain and suffering. I'm sorry, the moral injury thing. But in my corporate world, I had some weird things that happened. That like had one instance where this guy was having a pretty open secret sexual affair with one of his subordinates who happened to be my peer, and this girl was just a Fruit Loop. I mean, attractive, I guess, in her own way, but just not good at anything. Like everything she had the reverse Midas touch, where everything she touched turned to shit. Well, I got put in charge of, basically, they would put me on these heavy lifting projects, within organizational development and human resources. And so I would go into there to just these absolute soup sandwich departments, and my job was to get them back up on their feet and thriving, figure out whatever systemically was all messed up. So I did that, and in this one case, she got appointed to this really well functioning department and ran it into the ground. I got put in on this department that was on the ground and got it the best performing department that they had within this Amazon structure. So about 2 weeks before performance reviews came or were about to be issued, he pulls me in and pulls her and says, "Hey, I'm giving you her department and her your department." And I was like, "But why?" "Well, it's her time to shine." "What do you mean her time to shine?" "Well, it would be really unfair to her to go into performance reviews having being responsible for a department that isn't really her fault that it's bad." Like, kind of thing, because he evidently, as it came out later, she had been threatening him that, hey, if you don't promote me and take this Jake guy down a few notches, then you're going to get it, right? I'll report you. So anyway, so I'm like, wait, so I'm taking her department? Like, what the hell? Like, how is that my responsibility if you want to use that frame of logic? And he says, well,
Mm-hmm.
that's your time to shine. And I said, but like, kind of thing. And he's, my decision's final. Get out of here, kind of thing. Well, I went and fixed that department too. It took me about 6 months, but I went and fixed that department too. And but guess who got ultimately the promotion?
Mm-hmm.
The
She did.
girl, yeah. So and that
Yep.
dude,
Mm-hmm.
that because it was so on its face, absolutely corrupt, and there was literally no recourse. Like, at least in the military, you could do some sort of like captain's mast or something, right? There was literally no recourse for me, and that, like, when I was a young officer in the Corps, first lieutenant captain type, I was like, man, there's a lot of really shitty Marine Corps officers that are not actually doing the things that the military, Marine Corps leadership ethos says you should do. I was like, certainly, in the civilian world, it would be better, because if people are, stupid and they suck, they get fired because there's at least a profit motive. No, 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 no. That is not the case. That is not the case. We smear turds around out here. We push them around. We hide them. Anyway,
Think it's
that
bad in the military. Get out here.
oh God, dude, like, how
Yeah.
naive. But that rocked my world. And it sounds silly, but in its own way, that was a trauma. It was like, wait a minute, all my hard work and the things that I should be noticed for and awarded for can be just suddenly taken away because somebody is compromised in a potential sexual harassment, sexual assault case with one of his subordinates. Like, that's how easy it
That he
is.
himself
And
caused.
right, right, right. And so,
Mm-hmm.
from that, it was almost like, at that moment I was like, well, shit, I can't stay in a company then. I have to build my own cash revenue streams, my own ability to support myself, because I'm not going to screw myself over. And so, it took me some years, but I did it. I was able to build something to where I don't need to work for anybody anymore. So it's stuff like that. But that's kind of a very simple perspective of moral injury, how it can occur. And in our veteran community, especially with the vet bros, it's like, oh, bro, just get over it. It's like, yes, true. You do want to get over it, but there's a process behind how. And it's not, setting up a video and weeping on TikTok and show, with sad Sarah McLachlan music. No, uh, you do got to talk to people, but typically the only ones that really give a fuck about you, your bros and close family, if you haven't already driven them away. And we could talk about that three-legged stool analogy I gave you at some point, but there's a certain way you have to address moral injury, and much of what ends up being post-traumatic stress disorder comes from that moral injury of your brain trying to wrap itself around, what the fuck did we experience? What did we do? What did it all mean? Da, 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 da. Which is why, when that Build Back Better Biden pullout happened, what, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, out of
That was
Afghanistan, it
that
was
was a
such a fucking
nightmare.
goat rodeo. Man, I murdered so much whiskey watching that. That was fucking hard. That was difficult to
That
observe.
I wasn't in Afghan. I was in Iraq, but just the fact that all the people that we lost,
Yeah,
just to pull out in that manner, just all the time and blood and sweat spent, and that's how we're gonna pull out. So what
Yeah,
it brings it's kind of like what was different from Iraq and Afghanistan with Vietnam. What was there was no
dude,
difference.
dude, the same dipshits who watched like the Biden administration, some of those old men, the same fuckers who watched us goat rodeo our way out of Vietnam. It was like they literally set up the same fucking thing to happen. And now we get to watch parades with the Taliban
Yeah,
with our Star Wars weaponry. And it's like, you don't understand just how much hate and discontent I have against these people, the
the
leadership
one
class,
thing
the elite
that
class.
the one thing that I'm very thankful for is that the general population, the American public, did not treat us the way Vietnam vets got treated.
Yeah,
I'm extremely thankful for that.
right. Yeah, no, for real, because that's well, and that added even more moral injury to the Vietnam vets, which is,
Hmm.
Montana's got like a 12% of the population, somewhere 10 to 12% is military vets. Dude, there are, I'm out here in the Bull Mountains. I have met quite a few Vietnam vets that came here after the war, bought 30, 40 acres for, $2,000 back then, and
Hmm.
literally built a FOB, like a forward operating base or a jungle camp. I started noticing it when a guy had died, a Vietnam vet had died, who had, alienated his whole family. And they're trying to do some sort of like estate assessment to try to figure out like what exactly was the property value. Well, we start walking through the property, and all of a sudden there would just be a big strand, like run of concertina wire. And so you would hit it, and you're like, "Oh, that's weird. What's that doing here?" And you'd turn, and you would walk kind of where it's directing you. Well, a little while away, you'd hit another one, another, and I realized it was like the
He was
concertina
funneling.
wire was a channeling action. And I told the daughter, I was like, "All right, check it out. By the time we get to the wherever this concertina wire is leading us, we are going to be at the bottom of some high ground, and it's going to be very difficult. We could try to egress back, but it's going to be very difficult for us to do anything with our flanks or particularly our front. And there will be somewhere near there a very hidden but very bunkered up position." And sure enough, it took us about 10 minutes of walking through the woods, and that's what we came to. And said, "Oh my God, how did you know that?" And I was like, "I've seen this before.
He,
Like this is
he was
like this
funneling
is
you
right."
into his firing position.
Oh, dude, and so we
That's what
climbed
it
up there,
was.
and sure, yeah, he had a couple positions dug in, sandbags and everything. It would have been really tough to get him, but he would have been razzle dazzling everybody. And if he did get overwhelmed, he was there. There was three or four position, two or three that he would be able to run back to. And so I asked everybody to get out of there, at the moment, because my thought was booby traps. Like, what happens if there's some fucking Vietnam style booby traps? And it turned, we
He
never
knows all
found
about how to
any.
use bamboo.
Well, yeah, he didn't have any bamboo, but like
Well, I'm
a
sure he
lot
could
of
get
these,
some.
yeah, for real, a lot of these old boys from Vietnam came home, but never came home,
Yep.
and they got the grizzled white old beards and the go fuck yourself mentality, and it's like society sucks such a giant knob when it comes to veteran, or what I call it, the guys who have engaged in the gospel of violence, right? Flowery way to put it. But the therapeutic community is really not very good at touching those guys or gals. They're decent at dealing with like victim based trauma, um, or just generalized like life malaise, as I call it, just that general feeling that everyone sucks. I'm sorry, that everything sucks. You're kind of anxious and depressed, not really happy with any aspect of your life. But there's a saying that the modern world won't be punished because it is the punishment for having given up everything we ever
Yeah.
knew of how humans are supposed to fucking operate. So, I'll jump into my experience trying to go get help. Because, again, I was an officer. I had a staff position. Now, deployment with 2.8, it was kinetic for everybody. I was out of the wire, quite a lot more than most people in my position, just because of, I was like my CEO's uh, key leader engagement officer, stuff like that. So uh, I was out and about with the boys quite a lot. But I was like, you know what? Although I was nearby where, like, gunfire would go over here, and you could hear the Marines firing back, and you hear the AKs and PKMs versus our, NATO weaponry, back and forth. It was close, but it wasn't like, pop, snap, whiz, bang right past
Right.
me. So I thought I was fine, right? So when I got out of the Corps, Navy was like, hey, you've got like a 56 out of something. I don't even know what scale they use for PTSD, but they're like, hey, you're pretty moderately high. You're going to want to go get some help with this, or it's going to catch up with you. And I was like, yeah, double it and give it to the next guy, bro. See you later. Like, I'm out. Right.
Yep.
And about 2 years later, it really started catching up with me. Now, here's what I didn't realize about really intense situations that you find yourself in, experiences, is that while you're in it, your brain is like focus, 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 live, 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 survive, survive, do all the things you're supposed to do. But it's when you get out and get kind of back, and you're on a much gentler grade of life, that's when your brain's like, okay, click, click, what the fuck was that? How do we make sense of that? And so with this amygdala hippocampus loop thing, after a while, what happens with your amygdala, and you can tell people who've been under a tremendous amount of trauma in their life, because their amygdala is actually smaller. It doesn't grow and get bigger with I guess injury or overuse. It actually shrinks. And so it's kind of burning it out at lightning speed, and your brain's like, ah, shit, we can't do this. So what are we going to do? All right, I know. Let's just compartmentalize that thing that's messing Jake or Mike up. Let's compartmentalize it. So all of a sudden, you're living your normal life. You're your normal, happy veteran guy personality. Yes, if you do delve into whatever that experience was, almost on purpose, yes, it'll bring back all the shit. But otherwise, it's kind of just locked away somewhere, and you can be pretty normal. But it's incredibly expensive, calorie wise, cognitive machinery wise, to keep that thing in a box. And there's going to be more than one. So you've got box, 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 box. And after a while, your brain's like, man, I can't keep doing this. We got to do, all right, what are we going to do? I know, let's just numb everything. And so you end up, if you've got, complex PTSD type stuff, you end up first losing your interest in your hobbies, losing interest in movies that used to make you laugh, hunting, being out with your friends, and all of a sudden you're like, man, I gotta feel something. I feel like I'm living my life under this wet wool blanket. Sex isn't making it happen anymore. Alcohol's not making it happen. So I know I'll just do more of all the things that give me peak happiness hormones, whether it be the adrenaline, the dopamine, the serotonin, whatever it is. You do more and more of that stuff. And so this is why you see PTSD people, veterans, engaging in more and more risky sexual behavior, more and more risky driving behavior, more and more risky drinking behavior. And none of that works. And so what I've kind of determined for myself, my own understanding of what PTSD is, it's like, what is it actually? Well, it's almost like an honor-based syndrome, where the way I conceptualize it is we are all, every one of us, we're living on a three-legged stool, with a rope around our neck, tied up to a rafter. And as long as those three legs of that stool are there, we're good to go. But what happens is, as we realize that we're not going to make it, that we're getting overwhelmed by whatever the hell's going on, this demonic force is, and it feels like a demonic force, just whispering terrible things to you all the time,
Yep.
having you do this
It's
awful,
nothing but
awful stuff.
negative thoughts and
Oh yeah.
desensitized, and
Oh,
it's just
wild, man. The
yeah.
invasive thoughts, man, the intrusive thoughts.
Yep.
And so, uh, pretty soon, what you start doing, unconsciously, really, is you alienate yourself from your community of origin, whoever you came from, whatever town, group, people, religion. You kind of break yourself off away from them, typically by conduct and activity that makes you no longer invited, right? And then you slowly and surely start ebbing away all of your friends. And we're talking about childhood friends, and this is where that asshole, like, man, he went to war and really changed. He came back and he's really a prick. Yeah, yeah, and it's not really on purpose. So then the final thing you do is you get rid of your biological family, your new family, wife and kids and all that stuff. You start acting in such a way, either it be through abuse, unreliability, or infidelity, to where they're like, you know what, to hell with you, we're out, have a good life. Well, once you're all totally alone, once all three of those legs of that stool are broken off, then you're free to pretty much go kill yourself in some nondescript hotel room 200 miles away, so other people can clean up the mess. And that's why I call it an honor based syndrome. It's like you get this delusion that I've got to go, I've got to die, I can't be part of this earth anymore, but I don't want to impact the people I care about the most. So I'm going to systematically get rid of everybody. So then when I go do die, they'll hear about it through second, third hand information, and they don't have to deal with it directly. Does that make
But
sense to you?
one thing that's pretty important though is that the vet doesn't necessarily realize that this is happening, because when me and you talked about this the other day, I was like, holy fuck, that's exactly what happened with me and my family,
Yeah,
and not even realize it. But so that's one thing I think that's very important is when we talk about this stuff, that's some form of that is what's possibly happening, but the veteran or the person doing it doesn't know that that's what they're doing. They don't
they really
realize
don't. No, you're just like,
it. They,
man,
they,
I
they
don't know,
have
I've
no clue
changed.
unless they're and unless they're given like with me, I was given an ultimatum. My wife gave me an ultimatum. Um, well, that and the whole I told you. It's I had no clue until that happened, and then once my world crashed, it's like holy shit, what have I been doing?
Yeah.
What the hell have I been doing?
Well, she had and I have a similarly excellent wife who was able to put up with me through all that nonsense and the subsequent nonsense, because as you know, it's not like you have one great realization and all your boo boos go away. No, it's still in there, right?
Right.
That's just the beginning of it. So if you're fortunate enough to have people that love you beyond your capability of being a dick ass, you're lucky. Not everybody is. And, I typically want to, because I'm going through my candidacy license right now here in the state of Montana as a psychotherapist for veterans, couples, families, but veterans. I can kind of tell where if there's a vet that's really in a bad way, I can kind of tell where he is on his journey to destruction by who he's isolated versus who he's tried to mend bridges with, versus if he even notices or realizes the negative impact, or what the negative impact will be of blowing up his world, because some of them really don't realize it. They'll just say, I miss the Army or Marine Corps, I miss the brotherhood, they never gave up on you. uh, well, no, you pushed everybody away, you got rid of them,
Mm-hmm.
you don't even realize it, but there is a very deranged purpose behind it, and you got to understand, kind of. And I like to anthropomorphize this PTSD, because it really is like it feels like you have this like demonic entity in you that's like whispering these terrible things that you should do,
Mm-hmm.
and if you just do this, it'll be all right. And so when you finally
Right.
come out the other
Right.
side, when you come out the other side and you actually get help, and I'll talk about when I went and tried to get help, you're like, what? I can't even recreate what I was thinking. Like, I can't, like, my wife would say, what were you thinking? Like, what was your thought process when you were doing gut, gut, gut? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I
I just
think
wasn't
back and I
thinking.
can't reach that same conclusion.
Yeah, and like about the voice inside of your head, there's a term for it, and you'll as soon as I tell you this, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But there's been multiple instances where be hiking or even driving, and
Oh yeah,
like one that comes to my
call the
mind
void.
often. Well, is like you be walking across the bridge and it's like, huh, I wonder what it's like when if I hit that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what would it be like to jump? You know, how's it gonna feel when I hit the water or hit the pavement?
Right.
It's
Or
it.
uh,
Oh, there's a term for it. I can't think of it right now.
it's called the call of the void.
Hmm,
Yeah, call
okay.
of the void.
Yeah.
There's a French term, but we don't speak that frogman language here. Um, but yeah, call of the void. It's like you're driving down the highway, and all of a sudden you get this thing in your head that's like, uh, go headlong into that light pole, or go headlong into that tree,
Yeah.
or like, and it's like,
Yeah.
no, dude, what are you talking about? We're not doing that.
Yeah.
And it feels like a conversation with somebody else. It's not like, no, I'm
It
not
feels
doing
like you're
that. It's
fighting with somebody.
right, right.
Yeah.
So it's a really complex thing to try to explain some of this stuff to civilians, and particularly on the therapy side. Like when I started really realizing that I had a severe problem after I had done some just really out of character missteps, approximately 2 years out of the Corps or out of active duty, um, and I was sinking about a fifth of whiskey. Like I'm talking Monday through Wednesday, and then Wednesday through Sunday. I A fifth, every 3 or 4 days, and that was just to feel something. It was weird. Anyway, so I
Yeah.
go into a
My
shrink, a no kidding PhD psychologist, and I laid everything out for him of what was going on with me, and he literally took it first session to, uh, have you ever considered that maybe you're transgender? And I was like, what? And he was like, well,
yeah, I'm
the way
confused,
you
but not
describe
about
it.
that.
Well, right. It's like, well, the way you describe it is, so you don't, you feel like you don't quite fit into society anymore, and the rules and roles that you'd always been in, it doesn't quite fit anymore, and blah 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 blah, and so maybe you're transgender. I'm like, no, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like all the way wrong with you.
Oh
So I
man,
went to another one. Uh, and that one was like, well, maybe you didn't get enough hugs growing up. It's like, no, my family was great, dude. I think it's the fact that I can smell phantom Afghan guts in my nose like 5 years later. What the fuck are you talking about?
hmm
And so every shrink that I went to is the same way, just completely out of their mind. And so I ended up finding a retired Marine Corps gunny who had gotten blown up a few times, and she was a marriage and family therapist now. And I laid it all out to her, and she's like, Jake, I know what your problem is. And I said, what? And she said, you're fucked up. And I was like, yes, that's the one. And so she did EMDR with me and got me right as rain, as you can tell, right as rain. Um, well,
Timmy.
so I kind of went on my way. About 6 months later, I connect up with a bunch of veterans again, a bunch of Marine Corps dudes, and every one of them was still in the throes of really bad PTSD reactions. And I asked them, like, did you ever try to go get help, therapy? And every one of them had a similar experience where the civilian therapists were just so far out of this world, they literally had no idea how to talk about it. Fuck, I had one guy who went in, and he broke the shrink off, and she cried. She said, I your problems are so severe. I don't know how you're still alive. I can't help you. And he's like, okay, well, thanks for being honest. I mean, hell, in Sweden, I laid everything out to a psychiatrist in Sweden, and I so traumatized him. He medically retired at like 38. So so I thought, you know what?
Wow.
I'm going to use the rest of my 9/11 GI Bill, and I'm going to crank out the psychotherapy degree. And the reason why I like the marriage and family therapy degree and licensure is it it gives you access to certain types of psychometric testing, and it's a very flexible, versatile type of degree. And veterans, like I said in the beginning, don't make it out as well without their family. And most veterans, they need something to live for, and that thing they're trying to live for is their family. They wish to God they could get their act together for their family, right? So I want to do a lot of veteran focus and family focus through that mechanism, right? So here we are getting licensed, dude.
I made a post up on LinkedIn the other day, and well, kind of about the same post that you had contacted me on Facebook, kind of that same kind of
Yeah,
post, right? Saying, hey, I got a podcast, looking for vets that want to talk about their story and stuff like that. But being as we were on LinkedIn, I also added in on there, hey, I'm doing this as a hobby, but I'm also trying to transition from my trucking career to a career at home where I could actually help guys, right?
yeah,
And I had a guy comment on it, and he was like, well, just keep that a side hobby. Don't try to make money off of it. I'm like, dude, I care less about making money off this. Like, I
right,
don't give two shits about making money. Like, and he was like, well, too many vets are trying to help vets just to help themselves. I'm like, how about we have a conversation before you lump me in with this generalization of stuff. I'm happy with the money I make in the career that I have. I'm successful
right,
with the career that I have. I want to make a change because it's no longer fits my purpose in life. Okay,
right,
outside of me wanting to come home and be with my family, my wife and my kids, I want to come home and do something that's gonna matter.
right. You got to give back because this
Right,
is our tribe.
right,
And yeah, a lot of
right.
guys don't understand that. And there's going to be a profit motive because you got to have money to do what we're trying to do and make it work. The world operates off of money and what some would call biosocial credits. But
Do I need
you,
enough money to survive? Absolutely.
yeah,
Do I need enough money to go buy a new Lambo every year? No.
no, but you got to be able to market. You got to be able to cover overhead. You got to be able blah 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 blah.
Right.
So yeah, dude, it's and that's one of the things that really gets my gourd is either veteran bros or just straight up American hating lefties who either hate you for what you're doing or hate you for what you're doing, and they're so loud and obnoxious. And my response to them is at this point, call your father and apologize, like for who you are. Just call your father and apologize.
Yeah.
Get on the phone.
And the messed up part about it was like, man, I wasn't even asking you how I can grow my podcast. I was asking you what career fields I could look into. Like I wasn't even asking how I could turn this into a job.
Right. Yeah.
But
They they all have
anyways,
a mission statement that they've got to talk about. Their little pet peeve.
yep, yep. Don't they don't want to listen to somebody stand on a high horse talk about how great their lives is. Yeah,
Oh
well,
God, man, it's yeah, I run into some
that's
real
the complete opposite of what we're doing.
yeah.
But anyway, so I guess
So
we'll let's see here. You've kind of hit on, I think, a lot of these questions I was going to ask through all that personal experience. Yeah. Oh,
um,
that's a good one.
real quick,
Oh, go ahead.
the how do you what resources help? Um, dude, there is a lot, and I cannot I can't underscore this enough. There's a lot of really hack job therapist types in the therapeutic world, and here's why. Insurance companies make it so that you have to, if you're going to charge insurance, you've got to diagnose everybody you see with something from the DSM. And typically the easiest one to do is generalized anxiety disorder, generalized depressive disorder. um, Whether you're seeing a veteran who is borderline going to jump off a bridge every week, or an 18-year-old girl who's really really upset that her iPhone screen cracked, uh, insurance is going to pay the same on those, and you've got to diagnose them both with something. And as a lot of these therapists are going along, they realize that the easy money is in treating the people that really don't have shit going on. They just kind of need to put on their big boy or big girl panties and understand that life isn't perfect, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so they'll focus on seeing these clients. So when you come in with your big boy issues or big girl issues, a lot of these therapists uh, have no idea how to handle them. I had one clinic I was working with where a guy was about to lose his family's ranch because of a poorly written will, and the grandfather had died. And the family, his biological family, was like, "Well, fuck it, let's just split the ranch up and sell it. You know, just cash out." And we're talking. This was one of the early ranches that had been established in Montana, and that's all this guy had ever done. And he had four daughters, and he had always told them, you know, their whole life was they're going to grow up and work the ranch. Well, now that Gramps was dead and the will was poorly written, the whole family, to include his mother, brothers, and sisters, we're all talking, let's just sell this thing, cash out, and go do whatever we want. And so this guy was having a massive identity crisis of like, I can't stop him, I can't outvote him. It looks like this sell is going to happen, but this is all I've ever known. And my kids and you know, his wife kind of knew what was going on, but his kids had no idea, and he had no idea how to tell them. And so he went. He was so depressed and anxious about all this. He actually went in and got a therapist. And dude, do you know what her advice to him was? And she's telling us this on kind of a end of week clinical call of you know what's going on with our client loads. She said, I when I told him, you know, when I feel really stressed, I like to take a hot long bubble bath, and I like to really exfoliate my skin, and I just like to put a lot of lotions and creams, and I just feel so much better. I recommend you do that. I think that would help a lot. And he's like, "You want me to take a bubble bath?" And she's like, "Yeah, I think that."
There's a
And I'm
place
like,
for that, but
"Well," and so they're all like going around the room like, "Oh yeah, that's so good. That's just so love baths." And I'm like, "All right." So a grown ass man with hairy balls came to us for help, and he's about to lose everything he's ever known and his entire identity. And the only solution us, the licensed certified big brain energy in the room, could come up with is a bubble bath, and that's going to help him. And they're like, oh well, when you put it that way, I guess it doesn't. Oh, they were confused why he never came back, and I'm like, that's why
that's
he
easy.
never came back, because he came to you like, hey, I got big issues here, I need help, and you came at me with bubble baths. Like,
A man that's probably never opened about anything in his life finally does decide to open up about something, and that's his response. Go play with bubbles.
so you got to be really careful. And then I'm trying to build a network of crusty rusty veterans who swear a lot and aren't offended by swearing, because we had a big conference, God, early last year, or you know, middle of last year, where they were talking about how to treat veterans. And this one lady said, I keep reaching out to the veteran community and I really want to help them. And they come in and they're just so vulgar, and their sense of humor is just so bad that I just have to tell them, will please not talk like that around me? And then they never come back.
Wonder
And
why.
right. And so I mean, she was just such a pampered princess. She didn't have any desire to actually meet her clientele where they were. And so it's like, look, you're never going to be cool with that type of humor or language. So let's just have you treat populations that you care about, because this ain't it, right? And so
If
we're doing a pretty good job of putting together uh, resources, you know, like really veteran therapists, like therapists that were veterans, or some nasty civilians that actually get it. And
right,
to me,
that's awesome.
well, no, not to me. According to the data, one of the biggest indicators that somebody's going to be actually helped in a therapeutic setting is how well they vibe with their therapist. And so if they're like ladies home journal type therapist, which is great for some clients, and you're, you know, rusty crusty veteran, it's probably not going to be a good mix, a good match. And so It's
Right.
really important that you line up well in kind of personality and vibe as your therapist if you're going to have any positive effect, you know?
No. No, exactly. And then like some situation I had with my therapist, it took me like 6 months to open up to her, and even then, it still wasn't really a huge opening up. But she was helpful in a lot of ways. But I don't think we ever really hit on any really deep stuff. But it was always, well, what are your goals in life? I don't fucking know. What are
Right.
your passions? I don't fucking have any. My wife and my kids. That and it was like, well, we need to do a mission statement. I'm like, well, how can I create a mission statement when I don't even know what those passions are?
Yeah. Well, see, and dude, if you
I
would have come to
understand what she
me,
was trying to do, but it's just she wasn't asking the right questions in the right. She was asking the right questions, but not the right way.
that and she totally missed that you were so far gone from, passions, hopes, and dreams, and tee hee, as I call it, tee hee. Frolicking through the meadows of happiness of life, because you were already well on that way of compartmentalizing and shutting off parts of your brain just to manage that. At that point, when you met her, the only thing you had left keeping you on this earth was your wife and kids. And so if,
Oh,
if you would
absolutely.
if you had seen me, had been like, all right, we got to get you into some really uh, empirically or data validated treatment protocols, whether it be, and somebody's going to throw a shoe at me for saying this, but EMDR happens to be really, really good, even though the data,
Well, see,
I'm sorry, that, yeah,
she
hit it.
she actually told me in our last conversation that I'm gonna say it the way that I say it, not the way that she said it. Okay. Hey, we're gonna drop you because I can't help you anymore. You're at a spot where you're not getting worse, but you're not getting better. You're kind of floating along. I can't really help you until you get off the road and come home to do some advanced trauma therapy. And I'd really like to go EDMR with you. And I'm like, well,
Yeah,
what am I supposed to fucking do until then? you know. But she did mention that, but she just apparently with my lifestyle, my career, that's one of the things that I'm not able to do because I can't go in an office and be there because everything I
right.
do is just like what we're doing now. So I get those
Yeah,
challenges, um, but that was
there's,
she dropped me because you know what I mean, quote unquote, dropped me
yeah,
because of that. So yeah, I understand where she was coming from and the reasoning why, but at the moment in time, it's like, what the fuck just happened?
right. You feel abandoned once again, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's probably she didn't handle it very well. It sounds like, but there's certain therapeutic, I guess, modules or protocols that work, and a lot of them that don't. Prolonged exposure therapy does work, but the dropout rate is like 60-70% because it's
Oh wow.
exposure to the things that scare you. So EMDR, however it works, and I say how it works because we truly don't know why it works. We just know it kind of does, except when it doesn't. But mostly, like, it's been found through a lot of replicated studies that it can reduce. It's like 80% of veterans that go and get it have a reduction in almost like 5/8 of their uh, traumatic experiences. It helps a lot. However, the person who does it has to be really quite good, and there's substantial training required to do it. And then there's but the problem veterans have is our stories are so sacred that you tell it to a therapist who wants to give you kind of a bubble bath response, and you're going to shut down hard and not open up to anybody for another 4 years. And
Yeah.
so some of the great thing about EMDR is you don't actually have to talk to anybody. Um, EFT, emotional focus therapy, similar, but now they're coming out with these really great neurofeedback machines that they can actually put like a Moonman helmet on your head, blast your brain with electromagnetism over 20, 30, 40, 20-minute sessions, and it's doing absolute wonders because it scans your brain, figures out what your baselines are, figures out what exactly is making you kind of tweak out, and it takes you through these modules. There's a kind of a virtual reality goggle sets that do a similar thing, and it like blasts your eyes, uh, and it can actually unwire the fucky wuckies out of your brain. I'm not using clinical terms here because I'm using veteran terms because this is
Right.
a veteran podcast, dude. So yeah,
Matter of
there's
fact, I'm
what,
gonna throw that when I do the little article for this episode. I'm gonna that link that you sent me with that VR style headset. I'm gonna
yeah.
throw that in there somehow because that's pretty cool. That's
Now,
pretty cool stuff.
dude, super cool. And according to prophecy, that thing is free to veterans through the VA. Um, it's just that is the promise. That's where the funding is. However, actually getting the VA to do it and not fuck up the order is very, very difficult. Like, because that's what the VA seems to do best.
Well, let me rephrase that. I want to put it in there, but I want to do
Do
some
it.
research and find how best to go about getting that stuff. I don't want to just post it on there and say, "Hey, this is available," without giving them a route to get it. If that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Let's see. Yeah, and while you're talking, or while we're talking, I'll look too. Uh,
Okay. Okay.
VX therapy.
Yeah. When I looked at that, I'm like, "That's pretty cool." When we talked about it, and when I looked about it afterwards, I'm like, "This is really cool stuff."
Yeah,
So.
it's been incredible. They and what it is they send it to you at your home. You use it at your home, uh, and it's like 60 something percent of veterans report a reduced incidence, like 94% reduction in their acute symptoms, and uh, you use it. There's obviously protocols to how you use it, but you don't actually have to talk to a human being. You just put on your Moonman goggles, and it takes you automatically through its modules, and it works really quite well. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and that's kind of I've had well, you even saw this on that Facebook post. Um, guys like, oh, why are you trying to guys to go and tell their stories to people that didn't serve? If you didn't serve, then you don't get to hear those stories. I'm like, and that's
It's so
in my
stupid.
mind, that's part of the problem. That's part
Yeah,
of the problem. Um, I know how hard it is for guys and gals to have these conversations, and I'm not forcing anybody to have these conversations.
right.
This is very much an open forum. If you want to speak, let's talk. Uh, but I've found that this is as therapeutic to me as it is to people that I'm talking with.
Oh yeah, for
Um,
sure, man.
I have found that doing this, even before I started the podcast, just talking to guys about shit was
Yeah,
way more than
guys who
anything
get it.
else.
Guys who get it.
Right, right. Yeah, I can't. My wife told me. My wife overheard me telling my psychiatrist one of my stories, and my wife was like, "I never want to hear you talk about that ever again."
Okay,
you know,
got it. Right. No, I
I'm
the
like,
same thing.
I didn't even know that you heard me. She's like, "Well, your voice carries." I'm like, "I'm sorry,"
Yeah,
you know. But
and and that's and that's a
it,
tough thing for veterans. Like I said, these stories are so sacred to us, and so hard to explain, and so hard to get people to understand unless you've been there. Which is where the cliche of you weren't there, you don't know. But
yeah,
America as a country, we like to fancy ourselves as a warrior nation. No, we like to start wars. We like to send people off to them, but we certainly don't want to deal with the aftermath once we're done. New boot goofing. So guys will come home and society writ large. It's like, I love veterans. I want to support the vets. You can talk to me anytime. And the minute you try, they're like, nope, shut the fuck up. I don't want to hear it. That's a lot.
yep, yep,
So
yep,
so you try to go to a fucking therapist, you try to go to a clinic, and they're telling you to take bubble baths or whatever nonsense, just totally in over their head in terms of the very real, very gnarly uh moral injury, traumas that's been done to us, that's happened. Uh, you try to go in to these, conflict zones with a good open mind about what's going to happen and what's not, and it surprises you, man. War is innovative. It's the devil's greatest tool, man. It is satanic as you want warfare, and it sticks to you unless you're crazy.
Right, right. And some guys just want to. How's it? And some guys love living in it. You know, they
Dude,
don't want to come out of it.
man, I knew some of those boys. Like, they were terrible garrison Marines, gods of war when they went over there, man. And it's like some of these guys, they'll never come back home because that will be the apex of their life, and they'll look for it for the rest of their life, whether it's in the armed services or mercenary activities.
Yeah.
You just you once you're, it's kind of Warhammer 40,000 lore, man. It's once you're chaos tainted, you're always
Right.
looking for chaos.
Well, those are the guys that go out and do
Obligatory
PMC and
Warhammer.
stuff like that. You know. Yeah, those are the ones that go out and do PMC, and then I probably won't put this part into the podcast. And then people like Hillary kill them in instances like Benghazi,
Dude,
but I won't
put
put
it in
that
the
in there.
podcast. No balls. No balls. Put it in there.
Oh man.
I
No,
fucking
it
hate
is
these
100% her
politicians.
fucking fault.
Dude, I hate these fucking politicians, and that's why I'm in my Uncle Ted Kaczynski era, living out here in the middle of nowhere. Uh,
Hmm.
reading books, being crazy, and doing my thing. Uncle Ted was right. They're all turds. They're all
Right,
radical turds, man.
left, right, don't matter.
They don't matter. So,
Don't
look,
matter.
the advice for guys I've got at home, yeah, help is out there. We're pretty good at this point on how to treat some of this veteran, gnarly, hairy stuff that we're dealing with, that we're talking about. You got to get with the right therapist. I'll ask you to post my link. That behavioral activation intervention kind of page I sent you. Um,
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, okay, yeah, post that, because that will allow me to kind of guide and direct traffic, because there's a lot of dudes out there that need the help, and here very shortly, officially, I will be able to talk to veterans and help them out from the perspective of one who's been there. There's always gnarlier, bigger, badder war dogs than any of us. Like, there's just guys
Yeah.
out there that are gods of the arena. Uh, I'm not here to compare my service to anybody else's. We all serve in our little small way. At the same time, these veteran types will have a fellow traveler with me, right? Within the clinical population, like, particularly. Um, what I'm looking at is how many guys get back. They can't get the care they need because they oftentimes they don't even know themselves what's going on, and they end up losing their ass, their company, their resources, their family, their homes in court, due to social workers or whatever, who are siding with a bitter wife or whatever it is.
Hmm.
And it really does take a subject matter expert clinician, license type, who can try to contend against some of that stuff in court, and actually help the judges understand what's actually going on. So, no, we don't actually need to throw this guy in jail. That's not actually the best thing we can do for him. No, we don't need to take his kids away and give it to the ex. Like, that's part of the plan. That's part of the
Right.
unconscious self sabotage, so you can eventually go and start a pistol at some point. Well, let's not play into that. We're not playing into that, Judge. So
Yep.
I'm just here to party,
Exactly.
man.
Exactly. And a lot of guys is when they get out, like with me when I got out. Yeah, I went through my mental health and all that shit when I got out. It was like, hey, do you have these thoughts? No. What about these thoughts? No. What about these thoughts? No. I'm like, just get me the fuck out of here. Like, I'm
Oh,
done.
dude.
I'm out. Just get me the fuck out. And then I didn't know nothing about what was available or anything like that.
No,
And 10, 12 years later, I finally started looking for stuff. And
it's
that's
because
that's part of the problem too. Is the stuff is out there, but at the same time, it's not getting into the hands of the people that it needs to.
Man, the cynic in me says that they don't really want you to know, because do you know how many guys I knew that actually raised their paw and said that they were having severe issues, and the big green weenie like literally destroyed their life? Like it, the minute they actually said that they were having a mental health crisis in service, uh, in a couple of cases, I knew, like, and these were really, really good Marines, brought it up to the chaplain or somebody, and that made it up to the division wizard, the division psychologist, psychiatrist, and a lot of these guys were out of the Marine Corps within 2 weeks,
Oh
so
wow!
they could get the care they need. And you better believe most of those guys killed themselves afterwards, because they
Do you
literally
really think they went to the VA? Like after
no
you kick them out, do you
no
really think they
no
went to the VA?
you
Really?
you 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 excommunicated them from the tribe for doing what they were hired to do. And when you said, "Hey, is anybody having a problem with what we're doing?" You're like, "Yeah, I'm actually having some of it stick to me." Get out of here! Like, it fucking dumb. And this is why, man, if I wasn't radically right wing before, having worked within the federal government and seeing how fucking stupid it is at every level, I
Right.
don't want those bastards in charge of any fucking thing. Like, I don't want them in charge of gravel. Like, they'll fuck it up. So, yeah, no, man. I watching how cruel, and again, back to moral injury. It was like, how in the world is it? And even my battalion commander and sergeant major and XO tried to stop the administrative separation for some of these guys because they literally did the right thing, but it was like division headquarters that kicked them out to get the help they needed. You better believe that was a moral injury for me, because that was
Oh
so
yeah.
fucking wrong. It embittered me against the organization. It's like, how can we talk about honor, courage, and commitment when we do stuff that's so feckless and limp-dicked and dishonorable? Like, even our enemies would be like, ugh, ugh, brother, ugh.
Yeah. How is giving somebody the boot out of the service helping them?
Oh, dude, yeah.
Because you know when they leave the gates, that's it. That's it. They're done.
Oh,
They're done. Is their first sergeant going to call them? They
nope.
might call them once or twice, maybe. Their first lines, the first couple of weeks, it's still kind of there, but after that, it all fades away.
Yeah, they needed to be, because the big green machine moves on, right? And so,
Right.
yeah, no, we look, what I'm trying to build here, and over the next 2 years, uh, I want to create a almost an intensive retreat for veterans where we can get together. I've got various locales that I want to make this happen on, but imagine a group of dudes like us getting together for 3, 4, 5 days on some rural property out in the middle of nowhere, really going through some of these protocols that I'm expert at or will be expert at, as well as the fraternity and the brotherhood and the mud and the blood and the drum beating of actually talking about it, warriors as warriors, about what that shit meant. What the fuck did we do? Did it mean anything? It didn't mean anything to these fat fucks around us, civilian types,
Right.
right? That was just like, thank you for your service. And
Well,
then my response when people
2001 to
say thank,
2005, it meant something.
right, right.
Uh,
Well, in the Bush and Obama administrations completely fucked it up. It seemed like Trump was trying to do something, and then the Biden administration completely fucked it up. But when people tell me thank you for your service, my patent response is, thank you for paying taxes and funding my war machine. Like, what do you want from me? Like, you
Pretty
did your
much.
part, I did mine. You know, some gave all.
That's pretty
You
much what
gave
I started
taxes, but
saying. Is thanks for paying your taxes.
right, dude. And but I really want over the next 2 years, like I say, to create a thing where probably at any one time 8 to 11 guys can get out together for a 3, 4 day intensive. Can you imagine, dude, what that would have done for you, what that could do for you, if you were able to get with a bunch of like-minded, like experienced boys that at the end of the day, I mean, you're going through all this shit, protocols and whatnot throughout the day, that, team building even. But then at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
in a kind of a structured, meaningful way, everybody's telling their stories with guys that were actually there, and you can actually let the emotion out. And I don't mean crying necessarily, but that, as you know, that happens when you're with the right guys,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody's going to be like, yeah, okay, you don't need to talk about it. It's too hard, huh? Okay, yeah, right.
Yeah.
The civilians
Yeah.
suck. The cilians, it's not their fault. They just, there's no way for
Nobody's
them to
gonna
come
say
home.
"suck it up, Buttercup."
Yeah, right.
You know,
Don't worry, I'll bring a
let that
taser
shit out, dude.
when those cafeteria
Those Corvettes.
the food service soldiers and Marines are like, you're just being a weak little bitch. Lock it in, devil. It's like they'll get tased. I'll bring a taser.
I'll just bring one of my cattle prods.
Yep, for real. So,
Oh man. So let's see here. What else do we got? I think you pretty much hit on a lot of it.
sorry, man. I
Let's
go
see.
on and on.
Oh man, there's nothing wrong with it, man. It's been great.
I hope so.
It has been
So,
great. You've pretty much hit on everything that I put on there.
well, I like things to be pretty neat and tightly packed, So hopefully it was a good podcast for you and you got something out of it, and hopefully it helps some of the boys and girls out there. We tend to use a
Hopefully
very
so, man.
gendered language, like the guys, the boys, the guys, but there's a lot of really serious war fighting women that served with us, and it can be tough for them to associate with the likes of us, hairy, profit looking, by the
Right.
way. We look very regal, very profity. Guys like us, because uh, girls have cooties, and some, fighting men, veterans, don't like really talking or interacting with women, which is weird because they're great Amazonian warfighters, and we've got to integrate them too. But the
They
thing that
like
we're
easy to make ovens,
absolutely
and we
are,
like crayons.
well, right, dude, we as coming from the fighting men, we are really, really allergic. We do not want to be associated with this current crop, this generation of people where everything's a fucking trauma. If you hear an opinion that's against what you believe, that's a trauma or a micro or whatever.
Oh yeah.
We
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
desperately do not want to be associated with those morons. But at the same time, we understand that we, in many cases need help. But at the same time, we are not easy pickings, man, for most therapists. So we
Right.
try to go in and get help with these therapists. Like, yeah, I'd rather talk to the 21-year-old college girl that's stressed out about college, not you, because it pays the same, right? And
It's
they're easier
easier.
to deal with. So you gotta, you and I, we've got to get the voice out there. We've got to get the information out there, of what I'm doing and what you're doing, and this is how it's going to work back and forth together to save more lives. Because the what is it, 21 per day? I those are kind of spurious statistics. They're not necessarily suicides per se. There's just a lot of poor health, especially towards the end of life with a lot of
Yeah. Look
veterans.
at me.
But well, what's that?
I said, yeah. Look at me. Poor health. Yep.
Dude, go get your kettlebell, man. You gotta keep that strong.
Oh, dude. But the plan is the end of October or the end of the year. I'm out of this truck.
Good.
I'm done. I'm done.
Good.
I just got to finish
So
paying for my next little one's birth. So
you
I'm
know how that
actually
keeps happening, right?
trying to. Yeah. Oh, that's getting solved too, buddy. I'm actually looking up the statistics on the suicide count right now. So this is as of 2021. Veteran suicides at September 11th, 2001 was 133,867. And we lost 7,000 in Iraq. Is it 7,000?
Yeah, yeah. It's like I said. I The 21 per day thing, it's become a huge branding piece, a huge marketing piece. I don't want to besmirch it. I've got to go off data driven things as much as I can because a lot of it is difficult. Um, it's our guys and girls killing themselves as veterans due to service related stuff or follow on just terrible life decisions, and how much of the terrible life decisions come from the trauma stuff, right? So,
Right.
uh, what we do know is even if there's not a no kidding suicide, I think probably we've both known guys who were stellar, starshine, beautiful crystal men prior to service, and then by the end of service, they were husks of who they once were, and they just kind of go out living their life in ways that are just they don't reflect the men we know they are, and it's like they're stuck
Right.
trapped inside themselves. Something's lost, something's gone, and it's like fuck me, man, we got to get you back. We got to How do we get you back, right? And so that's kind of that's what I want to focus in on. That's what I want to do for us boys and girls.
Well, one thing that really struck me when I was looking at some things the other day is, did you know that Wyoming is the number one state for veteran suicide and Montana's number two?
Well, I think that also correlates with suicide in general in Wyoming.
See, I'm not. Yeah, it looks like it does. Yeah, but like I came to Montana to find peace, but it seems like a lot of guys, a lot of veterans, are not finding, or not really finding it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like all right. So I just pulled it. Wyoming has the highest rate of suicide anyway. Montana has the second or third, depending on the year. It's mostly because the economy here is you could probably fit it in your semi truck, the back of your semi truck. It's small economy. It's pretty nichey. It's kind of it's a free living clunky state that doesn't have a ton of economic opportunity, and what is available doesn't pay very well, and it's friendly but not warm. Like the people, it's
That's a good way to
like
put it. That's
I like my wife and I, because we lived in the South for a long time, like the friendliest mother, like so friendly you thought they were retarded half the time. Like
hmm
you do upon first introduction, they'd be like, "You need to come to the family barbecue. It's this weekend. Here, and so you'd go, and everyone would treat you like they'd always known you. You come here, and you're like at like standoff handshake distance from your neighbors for like 6 months before you're allowed to know their last name. It's just like, do we got to be so fucking crusty here? Do we got to be? Yes, we are rural. We like to be left alone. Do we need to be left that alone? Because veterans are when you get us together, it doesn't matter the age. We are the happiest retarded children on earth. Like happier than a busload of retards going to Chuck E. Cheese, as they say, when we're together. And we miss that camaraderie, man. We miss people not getting offended at every fucking thing. And so, yeah, it gets lonely. And people are like, thank you for your service. And you're like, yeah, man, been tough out here lately, looking for extra friends. I'm like, well, I hope you find them. Okay. All right. Fuck me too then.
Oh
Jesus.
man. Yeah, but
Am I
I found
wrong?
that very interesting when I come across. No, not at all. Not at all. I just found that statistic very interesting. I was surprised that Montana was number two.
Yeah, man. It's like I said, it's the weather during the winter sucks balls. Um, it's cold, snowy, wet, or dark. One of those three, and usually all of them. And it's a lot of it is the economic limitations that it's like it. I've never seen people work so hard and struggle so much for a dollar than here.
Yeah.
Again, the population is you, me, and like six buffalo. Like it's really, really tough to spread load economic excellence like that and the public schools here are not very robust. And so, like, there's billions of dollars, trillions of dollars being made on like e-commerce, online type things, and a lot of guys just aren't even aware of it whatsoever. Like uh, I write for LinkedIn. They used to pay uh, me to do it, and then when I decided to kind of shift gears, I pulled out of that. But it's like I'm writing for at LinkedIn again. I can sell coaching packages. I can. I've got my construction company. I can do life coaching, executive coaching, all kinds of different things, right? Because I've set it up, like I said, what Marine Corps, one of the Marine Corps isms was two is one and one is none, right? So if I've got one revenue stream, that is no revenue stream. So I got to have at least two or three, so what I would recommend to veterans is they really, really, and the veteran identity thing is really hot right now. The veteran, like, people are so hungry and starving to have, I hate to use the term, but validated that their life is worth living, that they're actually in this body day to day experiencing something that's actually going to matter. Veterans are excellent at being able to help people facilitate that experience. And so being able to go online, some of these guys that make like these TikTok followings, or even like TikTok or Instagram stores, Facebook stores, whatever it is, but getting it out there in a way that you can turn your really difficult, very rare, I think it's like what, 1% of the US population actually serves in any kind of, military thing. It's
When I joined, it was 1%, but I think it got as high as 3, didn't it?
maybe so, but under 5%, right?
It don't
So
matter.
out of
No,
every
whatever, don't
100
matter really.
people, yeah, you nerd. Out of every 100 people, it might be one, two, or three that has anything in their experience like you, and so it almost makes us in many ways expert if we can get over kind of the fucky wuckies that it does to us sometimes. So I people right now, because everything in this world is fake and lame, they're looking for authenticity, and that's why people tend to quite like veteran actors, veterans on social media, because we say hilarious jokes that everybody knows is hilarious all the time. We're strikingly handsome. People get offended, and it's the exact people who get offended are the ones that everybody wants to offend but doesn't have the balls typically. And so
Right.
in a lot of ways, I recommend veterans get out there and get about it. Like the America needs us right now to lead from the front in these fucking culture wars. Because it's like the worst people on earth, the worst people in history at this point are trying to burn everything down that we've built over the last uh, 500 years as Western culture. It's vile. And it's like, no, you're not doing that, son. Knock it off.
Yep. Yep. I've actually, on a whim, I have thought about. I've had the idea, I should say, maybe I should run for politics. And then I thought about that some more. I'm like, I'm just not that fucking smart. And then I look at the politicians and I'm like, oh, I'm better than that.
Dude,
you know?
get into it. Well, and here's the thing. And
Oh, dude, it's not my style, man. It's not. It's really not.
that's probably why you ought to do it, by the way. But get into something local, man. That's it.
Right. Right.
The library council or something. It doesn't have to be national politics. In fact, a lot of the
Right.
madness from the federal government gets held at bay by local, state sheriffs, commissioners, legislature. It matters quite a bit, because the craziest people, the most flawed people in Americans' history, now are hungrily trying to get political power. You mentioned Hillary Clinton.
How can I have a conversation with a Marine and not bring pillar that up? I mean, come on.
Fucking Hillary, vile swamp witch. But no, man. All right, so look, the I don't know that America has the appetite right now for another prolonged war like we just got out of in Iraq and Afghanistan. They really tried to push the Ukraine thing hard, but most of our generation was like, yeah, nah, we fell for this once. And they're like, aren't you a patriot? Don't you want to go to war with Russia? and be on the brink of nuclear annihilation. We're like, no, not really. Like, you guys lied about the last one. Why aren't you lying about this one? Like,
Right, right.
You're a Russian stooge. And it's like, all right,
And,
fucker, like, leave me alone.
and
So
just for those out there that like the idea of nuclear war, I just want to say that they may hit us first or we may hit them first, but it's mutually assured destruction.
lottie dottie, everybody loses. So
Yep,
uh
everybody.
lottie dottie, everybody. So man, I think that we're going to kind of ebb down and not do as many wars, at least to the degree that we had done it through 2001 to 2021 or whenever it was.
We can't, it's not
That was
sustainable.
fucking expensive. What's that?
It's not sustainable.
It's not
It's not
sustainable.
sustainable. It's not sustainable. We don't have an actual target. Well, we have a target, but we don't have an actual goal, I should say. We don't know what the end game is. It creates generational. There you go. It creates generational fighting. Like all the shit that we've done the past 20 years in Iraq and Afghanistan has done nothing but raise generations of people that hate us.
Oh, dude. And I got to know Islam so fucking well over there, and a lot of respect for it. Because at first I was like, kill them all, let God sort them out. But once I actually got to know these good boys and girls, I was like, okay, well, maybe we kind of need to take a reality check and not go kicking in some other man's door, beating up his kids, and then wonder why the whole neighborhood hates us, right? Um, yeah, not saying there ain't some bad dudes in Islam that need to be taken out for sure, but how much of it is a self-licking ice cream cone of our own creation that if we would just quit trying to be, world police, probably wouldn't happen so much. But I say that the wars are kind of coming to an end for a reason. It's that people, I think the American public are going to be a lot less interested. There will always be that kind of demure, polite, thank you for your service bullshit. But in terms of people being willing or ready to hear our stories, and we must tell our stories, and this is how warrior cultures of the past were correct. You'd come back from the war, your war runs, and tell your story to your people over the fires, some sort of victory march, and that's why PTSD. It's not a new thing per se, but it's a new thing in the way that it's new for us, because when you come home for us, you're just supposed to shut your yup. There's no honor about it. They say thank you for your service. They don't actually want to hear about it because it makes them feel really gross and icky that that's actually going on. And they asked you to do it. They don't want to hear about it. So we've got to increase our veteran networks and our ability to tell our stories to each other, get it in writing for our kids and our grandkids, and also be a testimony and a voice against this fucking evil that we've all seen and partaken in. Because it's like, what the fuck was the purpose? Like,
Yep.
we didn't actually achieve what we were sold that we were going to. Like, Taliban is still in
And
charge of Afghanistan.
yeah, and I had this told to me the other day. Well, I was just I'm not gonna say what he was because he might be watching this. But I was just a line cook. I don't have a story. Yeah, you do.
Yeah,
Yeah, you do.
yeah,
I don't care if you were a line cook. I don't care if you were a dude cleaning porta johns. You got a
right.
story.
You got a story,
You
and
may not have a combat story, but you got stories about how the service impacted you.
right, yeah, and
That's
the nasty lies of our political leadership, which you really can't. There needs to be hell to pay for what happened, and hopefully that's coming in the next few years. But doesn't seem to. When you're young, you think that the good guys always win. Nah, you find out as you get older, the
no.
bad guys win a lot, like a lot.
Yep. Yep.
And that's one of
That's
those
true.
realities that in terms of moral injury, as we started this whole conversation, that's one of those things that tends to hurt the most, where you realize not only do the good guys not always win, the bad guys actually win quite a lot. And sometimes, despite your best efforts, you realize maybe what you were up to, your activities, weren't the best for the globe, weren't the best for humanity. That we all went into Iraq raging and fist fighting about weapons of mass destruction that ended up not existing. We collapse, the Iraqi culture and government, and what moves in but Al Qaeda and ISIS. And it's like, really? Like, that was not cash money. We
We
probably
created a
shouldn't have
vacuum
done
chamber.
it. What's that?
We created a vacuum chamber.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's that, and that's tough to deal with for people. Anybody who's not a fucking psychopath, that's tough to deal with. And most of us, it's very rare that you actually have psychopathy in the military. Um, and so it tends to haunt. And so I know some guys that had to he had to move away from Southern California where he got out of the Marine Corps because there were so many like Assyrians and Armenians and things like that, that the little kids that he would see, in Anaheim or LA or Thousand Oaks, would remind him. It was like, holy shit, I was just seeing kids either dead or killed by American activities or ISAF activities or allied activities or even Al Qaeda activities that were literally no different from that little boy and should have had that happy of a life, but will never because of what we did. And so he ended up having to move away from Southern California because it was too much. And it's like, that is tough to deal with. That's
Mm-hmm.
really rough, and a
Yep.
righteous response in my mind. Well, it's kind of acknowledging something bad happened, and we did it. Like, I won't say that veterans, American veterans, did the wrong thing, but most of us are fucking pissed at the federal government for getting us into the position, using our best blood and best intentions to do such corrupt wickedness. And for what?
To pull out
This is where,
20 years later
yeah,
and create an even worse situation.
right. Put gay.
That's yep, yep. But anyway, we've been at it for almost 2 hours now. Do you want to anything you want to make sure you said that you hadn't already said before we get off here?
Oh, dude, I probably said way too much. Just look, help is available. I had some really weird experiences with the VA trying to navigate it. The VA tends to not always attract and hire the best and brightest when it comes to clinicians. There are a lot of good ones, but it's also one of those things where just because of how difficult it is to get hired by them, and I don't mean difficult in terms of exclusive, I mean, it's almost like you have to have an immense amount of self-loathing to go through their hiring process. And so sometimes the clinicians that we get in the VA are either really new, young, out of school, or in some cases I've seen were so professionally flawed that they literally couldn't make it anymore in the private sector. And so they had to get onto the government titty and become therapists or clinicians within the VA. So you got to be cautious on what type of clinician or therapist you work with. And if you find some that are just morons, they don't pass the sniff test, move on, find another one, plug into some of these veteran networks like I'm trying to build here, because help is out there. We actually know how to treat post traumatic stress disorder from the combat framework pretty well at this point. Not perfectly, but pretty well. Most clinicians, I would say, have stayed away from it a lot because it's so gritty, and it is really tough to sit and listen to these stories and the aftermath day in and day out and not have it stick to you as a clinician, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, reach out to me if you need it. Reach out to the VA and just hold your breath and go through the, be patient and stay in touch with your fucking uh, veteran buddies. And they're going to be retarded. You're going to call them and be like, hey, dude, I'm going through a time. And they're going to be like, I'm always here for you. Suck it up. And you're like, dude, shut the fuck. Stop with that. Like, we all got the hairiest balls in the village. We all know that. Can we actually be real with each other? You know? So,
Right, right. Call your battle buddies.
accountability buddies, dude. So, I, yeah, yeah. We could go on and on, which, don't want to. So,
But all right, well, it's been great talking to you, and hopefully we get a chance to do it again. Especially once you get your licensing and actually start making these moves you want to make. I'd love to chat with you again sometime.
Dude,
Um,
should be in about 2 weeks, I think, a week to 2 weeks. The state has confirmed they got everything they need from me. Now they're just doing the beep bop boop to actually issue the candidacy license. And the reason why that's so important is because once I have that, well, then whatever veterans and I talk about outside of certain like mandatory reporting scenarios is kind of
Knowledge as well.
clinician client protected under HIPAA laws. Um, to where uh, you know veterans do need to be able to unburden themselves of the shit they've been going through in a way that's legally protected, because some of y'all are attracted to really crazy girls and they will try to take everything from you and leave you with nothing through their lawyers or through the courts. And so you got to be with somebody, working with somebody who knows how to protect your interests while they're trying to pull you out of the swamp of moral despair. Does that make sense to you?
Oh no, no, I totally get it. I totally get
Okay.
it. Yeah. But all right, well, it's been good chat with you, man. I guess we'll sign off and until next time.
Okay. Yeah. Till next time.
All right.
The fast life, the fast living. They see the ambition, they know I'm past driven. Look, we are not the same, this is not a game. I be swerving through the city in and out of lanes. Yeah, cause if I see it, then I want it, then you better know I got it. Ain't no options, I'm about to do the damn thing. I'm an outlaw, you can never catch me. I'm in first place, you can never. These are the moments, only got one life. This is your moment, whether wrong or right. You're your own enemy, your own enemy, your own enemy. When I fall, I keep running. Feel the